At a bit of a loose end one weekend, I decided to take a quick trip to Budapest, the capital of Hungary. It turned out to be an inspired choice. I'm a huge fan of 19th century European architecture, so obviously my first port of call on reaching Budapest is that magnificent edifice, the Chain Bridge. It was designed in 1839 by an English engineer, William Tierney Clark, and it was actually constructed in interlocking parts in the United Kingdom and shipped over bit by bit in barges up the Danube and bolted together in its present locale. So you could look on it as the world's largest Meccano set. The bridge was opened in 1849 and was the first permanent bridge joining the twin cities of Buda and Pest. And at 380 metres from one side to the other, it was, at the time, one of the largest and longest in the world. Now, perhaps acknowledging its origins in this green and pleasant land, the bridge is festooned with stone lions, identical to those in Trafalgar Square, which kind of baffles me, as lions have never been native to the UK or to Hungary. Now, the Chain Bridge is one of the must-see, go-to places in Budapest, and for anyone like me who has an interest in the architecture and engineering of the 19th century, it is the place to see and be seen. It hasn't all been beer and skittles, though. In March 1944, the Nazis took out a short-term lease on Budapest, and when they were evicted in January 1945, they threw away their security deposit by blowing up the Chain Bridge. It was fished out of the river bit by bit, bolted together again, and reopened in 1949. And for those of you who spent your whole life wondering what the Chain Bridge looks like from the underneath, I'm happy to tell you that this is your lucky day. Stop on any street corner in Budapest nowadays and you will see them festooned with these sodding things. Electric scooters. Cheap, flimsy and nasty. They require no license, no road tax, no registration, no insurance, and if you want to whiz along without thinking about silly things like how much brain damage you'll suffer if you don't wear a helmet when you hit that tree over there, all well and good. But the truly bizarre thing is that these motorised Tonka toys are such an ingrained feature of Budapest life that they have their own statue. Words fail me. Mind you, in Budapest they have statues everywhere, and there's a bit of a strange tradition that goes along with them. This one is the little princess statue on the Danube. It was sculpted by Laszlo Martin in 1972, and it depicts his daughter Evike, who liked to dress up as a princess with a crown made out of cut-up newspaper. Now, here is where it gets a little bit weird. There's a strange but rather touching custom in Budapest that, by way of a good luck charm, you have to lovingly stroke certain parts of the statues dotted about the place, and in the case of the little princess, that's her knees and thighs. Okay, I suppose it's fortunate that there are no naked statues in Budapest, but let's move on. There is this one, girl with her dog. It's in Funicular Square. Apparently Fido has nicked her soccer ball and she wants it back. Well, good luck with that, sweetheart. Anyway, in this case she pat Fido on the head, perhaps encouraging his death grip on that ball. This one depicts the painter Ignar Roscovics, famous for his religious and historic paintings, many of which are on display in St. Stephen's Basilica. If you want to show reverence for Ignar's life and art, you rub his hand and his foot. Finally, we have this one, of Attila Joseph, which is just outside the Houses of Parliament, about which more later. Joseph had a short and bizarre life which ended when he was 32 years old. He crawled onto a busy railway track and was run over by an express train. He was unheard of in his lifetime, but his poetry was rediscovered in the 1950s when the occupying Russians decided that poems by a working-class communist would sit well with the international proletariat. Whatever your politics, if you want to show solidarity with Joseph, you shake his hand and you rub the brim of his hat. I have no idea why. Of course, no city on the planet is complete if it hasn't got a funicular railway, and Budapest does not disappoint. The Budavári Ciklo is a fun way to give your legs a bit of a rest when you want to get up to Buda Castle Hill, which otherwise involves a tortuous climb through a series of hairpin bends that make it more like a mountaineering assault course than a pleasant stroll. The railway starts life just near the Buda end of the Chain Bridge, and it scoots up to Buda Castle in no time at all. But be warned, it is a bit pricey. It's just 95 metres from one end to the other, and it will set you back 5,000 florins for a return ticket, and that's about £11 in real money. That's not cheap, and it can get crowded on the weekends, but it's definitely worth it for the experience alone. Okay, here is a bit of a history lesson. Starting operation in 1870, the Buda Funicular was the second funicular railway in operation in Europe, but regrettably this is not the original rolling stock. In fact, the whole thing is a meticulous reconstruction of the original, because in December 1944 the whole shooting match was bombed into matchwood and small pebbles by the combined might of the RAF and the US Army Air Force, and it wasn't put back together and reopened until 1986. Now, I have to say that the view out of the windows on both the way up and down is not the most electrifying experience you will ever have. I mean, if you've seen one brick wall, you've seen them all. But once you get to the top, you can wander about and perhaps see the changing of the guard, and you will have a chance to take a real scenic shufti at one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And if you look to the left, you will see their Parliament House, about which more later. If you're adept at getting lost in foreign parts, as I am, it's inevitable that while wandering around Budapest, wondering if Utkart means street, you will end up here. This is Heroes Square, and it's here that you will find the iconic Millennium Spire, which is topped with a statue of the Archangel Gabriel. And at the base are statues of the leaders of the 7 tribes of Magyar, who cobbled together what would become the modern state of Hungary about 1100 years ago. But I have to say it's a bit of a swizz, because their names have been lost to history, and who was called what and who begat who and when and where is, quite frankly, a matter of conjecture. For instance, some historians say this is Atmos, the son of Arpad, while others say it's Arpad, the son of Almos, who was the son of Ugyek. And if you're confused, there's more to come. This might or might not be Elod, son of Zabolks, or it might be Zabolks himself. This might be Kend, father of Korkan and Kaplon, or it might be Kond, father of Kuzin and Kupian. I tell you what, this lot will be right at home in Norfolk. On more solid ground are the statues of the more modern Hungarian heroes, as well as typical proletarian cultural icons like this one, Labour and Wealth. Note that Labour is bollock naked while gathering nuts in May, which supposes a more relaxed attitude to occupational health and safety than that we have nowadays. Obviously, I got a shed load of photographs of the heroes of Heroes Square, but this is not a history lesson, and in fact the purpose of this essay is to pique your interest in places like this. So go out there and have a shufti for yourself. And who knows, this chap might even give you his own personalised guided tour. Now, I am the world's least politically correct person. In fact, if political correctness and woke are the same thing, then I've been in a self-induced coma for 67 years, and I'm staying that way. But I couldn't help but wonder, weren't there any female heroes in Hungary's past? Now, I have said before that the best way to see any city is to get on a boat and float up and down, having a shufti at the architecture that lines the riverbank. And Budapest brings that home in spades. Now, you have to remember, Budapest is actually 2 cities, rather unimaginatively named Buda and Pest, and they sit here on the banks of the Danube, one of Europe's most historically and economically important rivers. Though why they chose to call it the Blue Danube is anybody's guess. I would tend to think that when Johann Strauss was staring out the window trying to gain inspiration for his classic waltz, he must have figured that the browny green Danube wouldn't have them queuing up at the concert hall box office. And I tell you what, they must love building bridges in Budapest. I mean, why stop at one when 8 gets you more bang for your foreign? Anyway, this is one of the sights you will see on your boat trip. This is Buda Castle. It's perched high upon Veregi Hill in Buda. It was built in magnificent Baroque style between 1749 and 1769, then reduced to rubble in magnificent Russian army style in February 1945, and finally rebuilt in magnificent 20th century Baroque style between 1952 and 1966. Now, this seems to be a common fate for Hungarian architecture. I'll tell you what, if I owned a Hungarian construction company, I'll be both paranoid and very, very wealthy. And finally we get to this gaff, the Hungarian Parliament building. It's located on Kossuth Square, overlooking the Danube on the Pest side of town. Now, this grand old neo-Gothic dame was opened in 1902, and bizarrely it now stands more than half empty. Now, you might think that is not surprising, considering that this is the largest building in Hungary, and they have just 199 MPs, while here in the UK we have 650, and they have extra space, 3.4 hectares compared to our miserly 3.25. However, there's a more dramatic and uplifting reason for the empty spaces. Just after World War II, the Hungarian authorities abolished the upper house of Parliament, and every single lord and lady was politely asked to make sure they shut the door on the way out. Since then, the Hungarian parliament has been unicameral and they rule without fear of interference from a bunch of overpaid, doddering old farts in the offices next door. Now that's a policy I strongly recommend to our new Tory Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.